Good morning and welcome to ULİSA webinar on very interesting and important topic on Central Asia dynamics, forging new partnerships and vision from Uzbekistan. In order to discuss this very interesting and timely topic and why important and why timely, I think it will be clear at the end of this session. In order to discuss this important issue, we have now distinguished speaker from the region, who is Fazlidin Jamalov, and Mr. Fazlidin Jamalov represents Center for American Studies, Institute for Advanced International Studies at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy that locates in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Our format is classic. First of all, Mr. Fazlidin Jamalov will have a presentation around the 25 minutes, and then we will continue in question and answers, and we project to finish during the 1 hour, also taking into account the tense schedule of Mr. Jamalov for today. And thank you very much, Fazlidin Jamalov, for accepting our invitation and ULİSA's invitation to speak and to have a presentation in ULİSA's today's important webinar on the Central Asia. And we know that the importance of Central Asia actually increased in last decade, especially, and maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, thanks to the combination of different geopolitical and geoeconomic factors and dimensions. And I hope you will touch also this dimension, especially from the vision of Uzbekistan. So, Fazlidin, the floor is yours. Please start your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, merhaba everyone. It's such an honor to be here in this webinar organized by the university, based Yıldırım University and the institute, which is led by the Professor Ibrahim Demir. Thank you very much for acting as a moderator, Dr. Kenan Aslanli. I'm very much proud to be here. And as you have mentioned, our topic is delved into the issue of Central Asian dynamics in forging for new partnerships. I will try to discuss within this 25 minutes of my presentation about the traditional actors and also a new actors which has shaped their policies in Central Asia. And also we'll have a discussion on current projects within the Central Asia, I hope, and then we may proceed with a quick Q&A session for any topic which you want to discuss. Okay, let me first to start about Central Asian dynamics. Okay. Probably most of the scholars consider Central Asia with five republics: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, which have adaptively balanced their relation with Russia, China, and the United States to safeguard economic and political sovereignty. However, recent geopolitical shifts, including the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, and Chinese influence as a global power, economic power, have significantly transformed our geopolitical landscape. Nowadays, the geopolitical vacuum created by these changes has attracted new players vying for influence in Central Asia. Such new actors include countries from the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is mostly rich monarchies. Of course, Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan, India, and Pakistan. I will go deeply within each country further, but talking about the multi-vector foreign policy, which is also important nowadays. Most of maybe the prominent American political scientist Alexander Cooley, in his book Great Game: Local Rules, he emphasized about the multi-vector foreign policy, which seeks to cultivate beneficial relations with multiple great powers while leveraging their competing interests. For example, Here emphasized that multi-vector foreign policy during the first half of the global war on terror from 2001 to 2020, when Central Asian countries navigated the influences of Russia, China, and the US. And Cooley also highlights that unsuccessful attempts of regional power, which are not classified as a great powers, to exert their influence in Central Asia. Such was actually EU, which transformed into the one kind of a scale within the United States. US, as I further called, is a Western vector. The rise of China as an economic superpower also has affected the region, with its signature on the Belt and Road Initiative, further intensifying their economic engagement. The BRI is promoting extensive infrastructure projects and resource extraction in the region. Um, and I would like to be short with kind of an introduction, and I think it will be good if we may proceed to the existing powers, talking about the existing powers itself. First, let's talk about the Western vector. The Western vector in Central Asia intends to counterbalance Russian and Chinese influence while promoting economic and political stability. The US has focused on security concerns and energy trade while advocating for democratic reforms. On the other hand, the European Union aims to enhance connectivity and economic integration. However, both actors face substantial issues, including geographical distance, logistical complexities, and limited influence compared to Central Asian proximity neighbors. Talking about the Central United States. The American approach to Central Asian countries can be summarized across the main dimensions: geopolitical, economical, and political ideological, I think. In one of the interviews that we conducted with one of the US diplomats in Uzbekistan, he describes that United States agenda in Central Asia is to make the Central Asia secure, prosperous, and democratic. Geopolitically, the US employs diplomatic maneuvers to offset Russian and Chinese presence in Central Asia. Economically, there is a clear focus on securing Central Asian energy reserves, particularly in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. For example, Kazakhstan is ranked in the 15th place in the world, and Uzbekistan in the 19th place within the natural gas resources. Talking about, for example, oil, Kazakhstan in the 12th place. Uranium, Kazakhstan ranks second in the world, and Uzbekistan 11th. To be precise, Washington is interested in the supply of uranium for 93 nuclear power plants in the country. Uzbekistan has about 3 million tons of critical mineral reserves with the potential of increased production. Kazakhstan, in this regard, has much more resources. If I'm not mistaken, 22 million of tons of explored and critical deposits. That's why 2 months ago, Uzbekistan signed a MOU with United States Energy Agency on critical mineral supply chains. I think it gives its evidence. But in 2023, 23, the US held the C5+1 summit in New York, where leaders focused on counterterrorism, strengthening regional economic ties, and energy security. Many experts agreed that the collaboration during the summit was largely symbolic, with the US signaling its continued interest in the region, showcasing US commitment to a multi-vector foreign policy that balances relations with also major powers like the United States. While C5+1 didn't result in any significant deals or political agreements, it provides a forum or a dialogue for policymakers to engage with one another mutually beneficial business and trade partnerships. That's why they launched on March 2024 the first B5+1 forum, business forum of Central Asian and the United States countries. This forum, actually, I wrote about and published in one of Azerbaijani journals, Trend Aze, about this issue and how the United States is trying to force Central Asian countries to balance with the Russian and Chinese influences in the region. Let's talk about the European Union, which is also included to the Western vector. I will also answer why. The European Union has also sought to increase its geopolitical footprint in Central Asia. However, despite its efforts, the EU has struggled to establish itself as an important player. One of the EU's primary goals in Central Asia has been to enhance connectivity and economic integration. That's why they propose Transport Corridor Europe, Caucasus, Asia, TRASECA, and the Trans-Caspian International Transport Road, or which is now transferred to the Middle Corridor project. The Middle Corridor is intended to create a viable east and west trade road bypass Russia, linking China with Europe through Central Asia and the Caspian Sea. However, the Middle Corridor faced significant challenges, including multiple border crossings, insufficient port infrastructure in Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, and delays caused by the small vessel size in the Caspian Sea. And as a result, while the European Union has promoted the corridor to reduce dependence on Russia, in reality, the practical difficulties hinder its effectiveness. Our former foreign minister, Mr. Abdulaziz Kamilov, communicated that Central Asia is often viewed by the EU as a neighbors of neighbors, which places the region in a peripheral position on the EU's foreign policy agenda. As a result, Central Asia receives a less consistent and robust engagement compared to closer neighbors and more immediate geopolitical concerns. That's why this is also included to the US vector as US trying to foster this kind of transportation corridors initiatives with the help of the European Union. Let's talk about the Russia. Russian vector. Russia maintains its historical sphere of influence in Central Asia through economic ties, of course, security dominance, and the presence of labor migrants in international students in Russia. In turn, Central Asian nations pursue a strategy of balancing economic cooperation with maintaining enough distance to preserve state sovereignty. Still, Russia continues to exert a considerable reach in the region through initiatives such as Eurasian Economic Union and investments in the region and the energy sector. For example, they are planning to build nuclear plants in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and everywhere in Central Asia in order to make a dependence on the energy project. As a main security actor in Central Asia, Russia maintains several military bases and installations through the region. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan are the members of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan left this military organization and blocks, fortunately, and Russian influence in Central Asia remains strong due to the substantial number of Central Asian migrants also, as I told. Despite the toll of the Russian-Ukraine war, hundreds of thousands Central Asian citizens still move to Russia for employment, sending billions of US dollars back to their homes. But compared to Russia and China, compared to China and the United States, I'm sorry, Russia hosts a significant number of students from region, around 30,000 from Tajikistan, about 50,000 from Uzbekistan, and 61,000 from Kazakhstan. In the foreign policy, Central Asian nations tend to adopt a hot economy and cold politics approach, engaging more in economic cooperation while maintaining a firm stance on a state sovereignty. They are open to economic engagement and etc. etc. And President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, for example, just a key one case example for you. Central Asian countries refuse to recognize the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, or Russia's war against Georgia in 2008. The region may also be distancing itself from Russian integration projects, while with Kyrgyzstan canceling military exercise planned by the Moscow-led CSTO and Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev postponing a visit to Bishkek, possibly to avoid meetings with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and in one of the summits and possible state visits. Talking about the China. In Central Asia, China plays a leading economic role through its signature economic initiatives and multiple cooperation fragments such as the BRI project and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. China focus on Central Asia is primarily economic, building mutually beneficial relations without formally expressing any geopolitical ambitions. Following its five principles of peaceful coexistence, it prioritizes economic cooperation and respects the sovereignty of Central Asian nations. With the growth of Chinese economy and its international economic engagements with Central Asia, trade between China and Central Asia has been a remarkable increasing from under 1 billion in the 19th to nearly 90 billion US dollars by 2023. By the end of 2022, China had accumulated investments about 15 billion US dollar in the region. Construction, for example, with Russia's lower figure with about 5 billion US dollars. China engaged with Central Asia through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is multiple platform proposed by Beijing to discuss security and economic issues in 2001, and then it's kind of a China's hope to use the SCO to advance economic and security interests in Central Asia. However, when Russia opposed China's proposal for creating a development bank and establishing a free trade zones, Beijing pivoted towards bilateral agreements and the China plus Central Asia format instead. Overall, these three vectors exhibit distinct strategies in Central Asia. The West maintains a relatively good diplomatic and economic status within the region, but its geographical distance. Russia used its historical and cultural connection to counter Western sanctions, build multilateral economic blocs, whereas China, on the other hand, has risen the predominant economic force in Central Asia. Now let's talk about the fifth block, fourth vector, actually. On July 4, 2022, leaders of SCO gathered in Astana, Kazakhstan, to inaugurate Belarus as a full member. And at the end of the summit, they produced the Astana Declaration. Chinese President Xi Jinping urged to build a common home of peace and tranquility, create an organization with the five China rules. But in the other hand, the President Mirziyoyev's speech to his fellow colleagues describes the SCO as a fragmented and that it could not manage to create a solid foundation for multilateral trade and inter-sectoral internship. 2 days later, the president of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan arrived to Azerbaijan for an informal summit of the Organization of Turkic States. The countries agreed to strengthen the green energy. Now Azerbaijan hosts COP29, and transportation networks with the Mirziyoyev is proposing Council of Railway Authorities of Turkic Environmental Council. This kind of cases illustrates the evolving nature of multi-vector foreign policy within the Central Asia. It is was described also to the Chinese and Russian and the US counterparts. Talking about the actors in the fourth vector, we have to manage that Central Asia prioritize first of all its relation with the OTS countries, Organization of Turkic States. On the other hand, the leaders of OTS, which is led by the Turkey and Azerbaijan, as a part of fourth vector, also includes the Gulf cooperation countries, which is of course Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and etc., India and Pakistan. These countries all share key characteristics such as the presence of emerging economies, relatively neutrality, with at least two of or three great powers. The relationship between the fourth factor and Central Asian republics is a marriage of convenience, I think. Now, for Central Asian countries, the withdrawal from the US from Afghanistan, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, and the rise of China have created an environment where Russia and China are trying to fill the vacuum left by the Western dominance here. Giving Central Asian countries a version of over dependence. We're looking for mostly cooperating, and it's kind of we're seeing this as an opportunity to be engaged with other actors, like Organization of Turkic States countries and also the Persian Gulf. Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan view Central Asia through a similar economic lens, but also a cultural partner with shared values. At the recent Organization of Turkic Summit States, Foreign Minister Mr. Hakan Fidan called for construction of a new alphabet to be adopted by all OTS members. And finally, in Baku, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I read a news that they built a project of a new alphabet in Baku, Azerbaijan, and now they are trying to adopt it to the all other nations of Organization of Turkic States. But nowadays we have to also manage that Central Asian countries are mostly looked on their critical minerals resources. That's why U.S. Geographical distance from Central Asia and Russia and China's overwhelming influence in the region try to observe, try to uh, gain a lot of resources, for example, uranium from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, also some lithium and sodium as new kind of dimensions for close cooperation. That's why they launched the critical minerals dialogue of the United States and etc. But I think it's time to create an own integration projects within the region. We are not just looking Central Asia, as I told before, as only five republics: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan. But we're also looking more beyond a bigger Central Asia, which also should include Afghanistan and even Azerbaijan, Georgia, Mongolia, and etc. It should be a wide region, or in Azerbaijan, it's called as a wide Caspian region. In contrast, this kind of uh, projects which is dealt in the energy and transportation, I think should be looked as a great opportunity for us to join in one organization, which is OTS. Uh, like, and in my conclusion, I would like to say that the fourth vector has significantly impacted Central Asia countries within its dynamics. and etc., has evolved to include partners alongside with the traditional powers. Uh, and of course, we look up that fourth factor as they have done with the warming up from Taliban. For example, the new countries will be included to this fourth factor. Additionally, it may be valuable to analyze the role of great powers play in the influence of fourth factor countries. Such findings, I think, may offer insight into whether the US and EU are truly playing a significant role in shaping Central Asian diversification policies and its relations. And all these future areas of research, I think, are crucial to building a more comprehensive understanding of the multi-vector foreign policy, and especially as its relevance increases in a more multipolar world. It was such a brief introduction of my presentation on the multi-vector foreign policy. Thank you very much. It was such.
Uh, Thank you very much, Mr. Fazlidin Jamalov. It was really very systematic, very informative presentation, and very important and useful insights from the region. So it is again demonstrating the importance to give a floor to the people from the region. It's not only about the Central Asia. So this regional specialization is really valuable. And of course, you touched several interesting issues that actually raised some question also in my mind. That's why also taking the advantage to be moderator, I want to ask some uh, uh, two or three quick questions from my side and then open the discussion to the audience and to ask our participants to ask their questions. But of course, we welcome short questions and remarks. So, first of all, you distinguished the positions and priorities of different actors. First of all, United States of America and EU in one block, let's say Western bloc, and then China and then Russia. And also, you always underline the geographical disadvantage of European Union or United States of America. Do you think that also taking into account this last integration or deepening integrative process among these Turkic states, Turkey also had this geographical disadvantage? If yes, how Turkey could offset, compensate that? For example, can this historical, cultural ties and relationship offset, compensate this Turkey's geographical distance from the region?
Thank you very much for such a good question. You have mentioned about the geographical distance that seen as a trouble for cooperation with the Central Asian countries within the US and EU framework. But to be honest, we have this kind of problems with even our region, Organization of Turkic States. For example, till 2017, during the reign of first President Islam Karimov of Uzbekistan, we cannot imagine that we may even communicate with our Central Asian colleagues, for example, to freely access to the markets of the Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan. The border issues were really complex within the Central Asian region. But after election of new Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev in 2017, the transformation and dynamics changed in Central Asia. And nowadays, with my own experience and with my non-biased mark, I can say that we have been seeing this transformation in a practical level. Now, citizens of any Central Asian countries may freely access to the now within the borders, cross the borders, and transfer their goods. However, one little bit problem we have with Turkmenistan. Unfortunately, we have a visa regimes with Turkmenistan. I think it is because of the political willingness of the Turkmenistani government, I think. But we need the time to to that kind of shifts when Central Asian countries, including Turkmenistan, will adopt their kind of a common strategies on integration within this free visa regimes in Central Asia. But talking about, for example, Afghanistan, uh, only Uzbekistan, unfortunately, supports with a humanitarian aid this country because with talking about the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, it is disaster, and only Uzbekistan now compensating it. Uh, but I think the most common and probably possible solution of these problems should be a transportation. Transportation should be looked as a paramount to physically integrating countries and regions. For example, China has demonstrated this understanding through the BRI project. But whereas the EU form as a for example, a Middle Corridor project or IMEC project. Uh, India spent over 500 million US dollars to upgrade Iran's southern eastern Chabahar port, which sees as a critical to accessing Central Asia. However, the key to all of these South Asian projects is that Taliban is willing to provide a stable corridor to transport of goods. Russia has recently flipped a U-turn in its relation with the Taliban, now cultivating favor with a group by inviting to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and also trying to for a step, creating a step for incremental recognition. Another way, Central Asian countries and are increasing transport links with the fourth vector countries through the Trans-Caspian Road, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway, and the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway projects. These enterprises all reorient Central Asia back to the ancient role as a crossroads of East and West to help diversify transportation routes to other actors, mainly to the Caucasus, Middle East, and Europe. But unfortunately, we have been seeing that there is also key issues with the Kazakhstan, as I told it before, with a poor condition of ports and Turkmenistan's political willingness, and also the Zangezur corridor in Armenian territory should be looked as a kind of a little problem so within these projects. But I hope that in the future they will delve into the issue because it is looked as an only one alternative way to cross the goods from China bypassing sanctioned northern corridor that goes through the Russian Federation. I think that transportation projects and energy projects also, which is aimed to diversify its economies, should be looked at an integration factors and the geography, and they may compensate the geographical distances within these countries.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's a good bridge to also the second question. So, we all underline two important dimensions that actually trigger the geopolitical, geoeconomic, geostrategic importance of Central Asia. And as you mentioned properly, these are the first of all connectivity from China to Europe, from Russia to Gulf. So all these east-west, even north south corridors, and also another small arteries like a Laps Lazuli that
Yes.
actually engage Afghanistan. All these connectivity projects, transportation corridors, somehow touch the soul and land of Central Asia. This is one dimension. Another dimension is the natural resources, rich natural resources of Central Asia.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that these two dimensions and based on these two dimensions create some also risk that demand the proper manage. And first of all, this is, and I will ask later your opinion about this possible risk. We know the geopolitical context, why attention shifted to Central Asia and Middle Corridor because there was a war in Russia and Ukraine, and there was a destabilization in maritime routes, including uh, Red Sea, all this process in Middle East, etc. And also we know that uh, all these maritime routes from the port to port model has some advantage over this, as you mentioned before, multi-modal projects. So
Yeah.
what will happen if we will see in future, again, stabilization in this maritime routes and again, reapproachments between Russia and Europe? Do we have the same interest on Middle Corridor and Central Asia from connectivity perspective? This is one actually possible risk. Another one is about the natural resources. Yes, before also Central Asian economies relied on natural resources like fossil fuels, and now we have energy transition, and it requires some metals and minerals. And again, Central Asia got attention because of different minerals and materials on this energy transition, including lithium and also from nuclear perspective, uranium, etc. Do you think that it also creates a risk for the internal diversification of economies in Central Asian regions? Diversification from fossil fuels and natural resources to added value technology-centered products. And in this context, maybe the most promising economy is uh, Uzbekistan because of talented human resources, etc. So I want to also learn your perspective on these two possible risky areas.
Thank you so much for such a complicated question, but I will really try to answer it. First of all, talking about the energy projects. Yes, you have truly mentioned that it can be seen as a risk for Central Asian countries. For example, Tajikistan's imports around 63% of its oil from Russia, which has increased the imperative to diversify both the energy sources and providers. Two petrol giants of the region, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan, are looking at the fourth vector to diversify their buyers and networks. In 2022, for example, China accounted about 96% of Turkmenistan's petrol exports, while in Kazakhstan it was at 80% passed through the Russian Federation. Thus, several dependencies have further sparked on an initiative to diversify the buyers of oil and increase renewable energy technology, which theoretically should result in energy sovereignty. However, we have been seeing that Central Asian countries are trying to invest a lot of money to their home countries, and lots of investments, as I told it before, comes from the China. And Uzbekistan approach on this issue is to invest the funds into the services and the productions that will give an added values. Why it is important for us? Because we should also pay our debts back, and that's why we're looking to diversify our economy. For example, Azerbaijan has, if I'm not mistaken, about 90% dependence on oil, unfortunately. And Azerbaijan looks forward of this transportation and energy projects within Central Asia in order to diversify its economy. And I think that this kind of opportunities may create not just a yes. I said it before to one of our Turkish colleague. Not only common values unite us, but also a common problems. We have this kind of common problems with Russia, China, and other vectors, including the United States and EU's influence and political influence in Central Asia. That's why I think it's important to navigate through the organization of Turkish states projects to solve these risks and to see how we may deal in the future. And COP29 conference, I think, which is held now in Azerbaijan, will look on how I hope that it will give an insight how Organization of Turkic States may look on the green transition projects in the future.
Thank you very much. So unfortunately, yes, we have efforts, but also we have a risk of to get into this vicious circle on this natural resource trap, etc. Thank you very much. We have a question from the participant, Mr. Mohammed Salih Haimiye, who is a master student on security studies at ULİSA in Aybu. The question is, how about the geopolitical interest of global powers like China, Russia, and the Western influence, the economic and political landscape in Central Asia?
Mm-hmm.
And second question is, how can these existing powers fit with the force vector that you explained in your presentation?
Thank you very much for this question. As I told you before, regarding first talking about the Russian Federation, in our foreign policy, Central Asian nations try to adopt a hot economy and cold politics approach. We try to be engaged with an economic cooperation with the Russian Federation. Unfortunately, we cannot ignore our geography of geographical location of Central Asia. That's why Russian Federation is considered as a top economic partners of Central Asian nations. But we are trying to maintain a firm stance on political side, on political landscape. Um, for example, although Russia is no longer an economic leader in Central Asia, Russia remains engaged with Central Asia through the uh, Eurasian Economic Union, which is an alternative way of WTO, World Trade Organization. In the recent years, this union, which includes Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, and Belarus, and Uzbekistan and Tajikistan as a status of observers, uh, being a part of the Eurasian Economic Union's free trade zone, has helped Russia mitigate the impact of Western sanctions by sustaining trade flows and securing critical resources. I think that is important if we are talking about the economic space within the Russian Federation. In 2022, for example, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that energy prices in the Eurasian Economic Union are 10 times lower than in Europe, making this offer attractive for Central Asian countries. That's why it is we're looking to the on mostly on the bilateral economic engagement with Russia, while standing away from the multilateral platforms that they are proposing, for example, this Eurasian Economic Union and free trade zones. And that's why we are fostering our relation with the US projects like WTO. It's kind of international, but it's US led. And 2 days ago, Uzbekistan successfully concluded its negotiation with American counterparts. And now United States became 27th or 29th country which recognized Uzbekistan's accession to the WTO. And I think as we would like to link to the European markets, it's important mostly to be engaged within the global project rather than comparing with a regional integration and economic project like Eurasian Economic Union. Talking about the China, as I told, there are so many investments, and Chinese economic influence in Central Asia is also linked to a broader global development strategies, which includes the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative. And one of the Uzbek scholars says that these frameworks provide economic and security government structures that Central Asian states supports. Uh, and the China plus Central Asia format instead showing that China may look up to the hierarchical engagement with Central Asian countries, while, for example, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and any other countries of the fourth factor not pushing this fashionable C5+1 format. Why? Because they are looking Central Asian states as an equal to each other. That's why it is important to look up on force vectors actors mostly in order to have a kind of a independence on our economic and political decisions within the globe. But I hope that answering to how can this existing power fit this force vector, yes, of course, there are against this kind of integration projects of Central Asia and even for organization of Turkic states, but not all of them. For example, for US and for Western vector itself, it is much more important to have an integrated Central Asia or organization of Turkic states rather than having separate states in order to reduce the influence of the Russia's security influence in Central Asia and Chinese economic interest in Central Asia. That's why it will lead to more kind of joint efforts in linkage with the European markets, I think. But Russia and China sees this kind of integration project as a threat for their interests, of course, because they are now benefiting a lot of from this initiative. As I told you before, Russia, for example, benefiting for that it income bypasses sanctions against here with this critical mineral support, energy project support, and etc.
Thank you very much. Again, very interesting answer. And thanks, Mr. Mohammed Taimia, for your question. So let me ask again to the audience and participants if uh, anyone has some questions and remarks. You can write also in comment box, or you can actually express yourself here. Do you have some questions and remarks? If not, I have plenty, but I want to limit myself here and to ask the audience. Otherwise, I have a list of questions here. No problem with that. Please, let me ask again to the participants. If you have questions, please. Um,
If
if
no one
not,
has any
yes,
questions, can I ask a question or make a comment
of
Yes.
course, please.
regarding the Türk Devletleri Teşkilatı? How Fazlıddin sees the future of this organization? He mentioned related to the vectors that he talked about, but I just like him to elaborate more on that if possible, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Demir. As we talked with you before on the prospects of development of this organization of Turkic states, it's just my vision. I think first of all we have to start with an common cultural values. Cultural integration may lead to the next stage, to the economic unification. Nowadays, in 2023, we did an electronic transportation of goods from Uzbekistan to Azerbaijan. It means that we fostered our economic relation and trade relations. That's why 2 millions of tons of goods coming from to Azerbaijani Baku port comes from Uzbekistan actually. I think this kind of projects may be dealt with other nations within the scope of Organization of Turkic States. I believe that this kind of language unification, economic unification, then may lead to the political landscape. But talking about the prospects of joining of other states, for example, Russia or China, or I'm sorry, Russia or Tajikistan, for example. Um, we are not expecting that Russia will join to the Organization of Turkic States because we are seeing that Russians' accession to the Organization of Turkic States may lead to the collapse of the organization that was done in 2005 with the Organization of Central Asian Republics, which transferred to the Eurasian Economic Union now. That's why we're seeing Russian joining to this organization as a threat. But talking about the Tajikistan, should we include Tajikistan as a Central Asian Republic to the Organization of Turkic State? I think we should now deal with our internal problems within the current Organization of Turkic States members. And then after kind of having a clear structure of our economic and political engagement, then we may see on how we may include Tajikistan or other nations who are willing to be a member of the Organization of Turkic States.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim Hocam, for your questions, and thank you, Mr. Fazleddin Jamala, for your answer. Are there
Thank
any
you.
other questions and remarks?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
My name is Mohammed Salih Taimia. I want to know the primary economic challenge faced by the Central Asia countries and how they are trying to address these issues in terms of to achieve like a sustainable development.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for your question. Regarding, I'm not actually the economist. I'm a political scientist. That's why I try to. But anyway, I try to answer to your question. I think that primarily economic challenge that we are facing within the Central Asian countries, it's our over dependence to the existing powers, Russian and Chinese vectors, as I told you before. And also, for example, only Uzbekistan, I think, from the Central Asian countries, pays a lot of attention in order to diversify and diversify its economy. Whereas, for example, Kazakhstan is mostly oil and gas dependent country. Tajikistan, unfortunately, in Tajikistan, we cannot build any infrastructure projects because of this geographical landscape of Tajikistan. In Kyrgyzstan, unfortunately, we have a problems of policymakers, how they deal with this kind of policy issues. We have successfully dealt with one border issue. Uzbekistan gave a lot of land territory to Tajikistan, to Kyrgyzstani side, but unfortunately, Kyrgyzstan's citizens raised a protest against Uzbek ethnic communities, and we were causing a kind of a fight. But I think we need the time in order to fill this gap, about 30 years gap within our countries, because we didn't have any kind of connections with the Central Asians engagement. For example, as I told you before, I cannot even imagine that once I will be able to travel, for example, to Tajikistan freely without any problems. Now, for monthly transit of people from the Uzbek and Tajikistani border is about 2 million of people. It's too much, I think, comparing the Tajikistani population nowadays. And we have also one key problem is it's energy resources. Energy resources dependence, as we are using the Soviet kind of a Central Asian circle of energy system. I think this is seen as a problem. That's why we are looking forward to engage more with the fourth vector countries, as we are building solar panels in the sandy areas of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan with the help of Masdar company, UAE's Masdar company, and etc. And also we are looking forward to grant transition. That's why. I hope that this kind of initiatives like Organization of Turkic States and maybe BRICS Plus may give this kind of opportunity for us.
So we can say currently the region is not economically sustainable.
I think yes. To be honest, the region is economically not sustainable because we do not have a common growth in all five Central Asian republics. For example, in Turkmenistan, as you know, the real GDP growth is too low. Because they are looking themselves as a closed country. They are not even engaging with us, only with the help of oil and gas, exporting the oil and gas to the Chinese side and Russian side. They are benefiting. They are not engaging in the diversification of its economy, but we are proposing this kind of deals within the informal meetings of the heads of the Central Asian states, which is proposed by the Uzbek president Shavkat Mirziyoyev. I hope that kind of mechanisms will work on in the future, but we should see, because even the kind of agreements, friendly agreements like agreement for friendship and cooperation in Central Asia were not signed with the Kyrgyzstani and Tajikistani side. Kyrgyzstani, yeah, or I'm sorry, with Tajikistani and Turkmenistani side. Turkmenistan proposed that no, we're a neutral country. Tajikistan because they had a problem with Kyrgyzstan. And we're looking forward to serve as a mediator in this kind of problems and foster our regional relations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamalov, and thank you, Mohammed, for your question. So again, despite the fact that when we look at the average regional level economic growth, it's around the 5 to 6% per annum. It's incredibly high, but also the region has specific internal problems that Mr. Jamalov underlined, and plus double-digit inflation in some Central Asian countries. But let's now, at the end, I think, of this today's session, taking into account also Mr. Jamalov's other program for today, let's very quickly shift from economy to global politics. So if there will not be any last-minute surprise, I think Trump will claim the victory in American presidential election. If it will be confirmed officially, what does it mean for Central Asia? I mean, Trump's second-term presidency for Central Asia.
Thank you very much. I actually was observing these presidential elections from early morning in Turkey, and 1 hour ago, even Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Johnson, announced as Donald J. Trump was elected as a president, 47th president of the United States. Regarding your question about the U.S. foreign policy towards Central Asia, will it be changed after the presidency of Donald J. Trump? I think probably the United States foreign policy towards Central Asia it will not change. Because as I told you before, Western vector sees Central Asia in the periphery of their interests. That's why after their withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, and now they are not mostly engaged in Central Asia. But for example, Biden's initiative of C5+1 and its kind of an institutionalization processes that started like a critical minerals dialogue and B5+1 forum, I think they will be we'll see a continuation of this kind of project in the future in Central Asia. And I think with as we have as Donald J. Trump and several Central Asian countries presidents had a chance to meet with Trump, will have a good opportunity to be engaged more, I think, in the in supporting the transportation projects, which is also the Middle Corridor project. But I think that it will also, the second term of President Trump will negatively affect on the migrant issues of Central Asian migrants in the United States. Unfortunately, from his meetings with potential voters in several states of the United States, we have been seeing that Trump tries to kind of create a policies against over migration in the United States. That's why some of the restrictions that was put forward in his first presidency against the Muslim countries will continue, but it will not affect Central Asian countries, I hope. And as it was done a transformation on the look of Central Asia in 2017, when Central Asia was looked through the prism of first South Asia and then Central Asia, as they have the South Asian and Central Asian Bureau in the State of Department. That's why they are mostly engaged with, first of all, I think, India and with its IMAC project. And then they are looking Central Asia as in order to connect these countries with the South Asian one.
So thank you very much, Mr. Fazluddin Jamalov, for all your interesting contributions that actually enhanced our collective understanding on the Central Asia and really internal voice from the region. Actually, I personally feel that. I think other participants also feel that we today listen to really regional expertise. Thank you very much for this. And also taking into account again your schedule for today. If there's not any urgent last minute question and remark, I want to stop here for today's session. And I want to thank Professor Ibrahim Demir and ULİSA for this opportunity, for this platform that they actually offered to us to discuss these Central Asian affairs. And also I want to thank Mr. Fazluddin Jamalov for his presentation, very good comprehensive answers to the questions. It was really my pleasure to moderate this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you one of the next ULİSA webinars or conferences.
Thank you so much. It was very nice to talk with and to be engaged within the discussions of ULİSA and University of Bayezid Yıldırım. I hope for further cooperation. I am looking forward as maybe one of the scholars of ULİSA may contribute to the development of our this kind of online workshops or webinars in the future, because we have also the specific topics on the prospects of development of organization of Turkic states, as our university also offers a Turkish language to the students. I think it will be beneficial to be engaged with the Uzbek counterparts in this regard. Thank you very much, Professor Ibrahim Demir and Dr. Kenan Aslanli, for this such a kind of good conversation on the Central Asian affairs. It was my pleasure to talk with you.
We thank you for your participation and contribution. We were pleased to have you. And I also thank the ULİSA team for preparing this webinar. And I hope that we can collaborate in the future for similar events and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Bye.